Hey, my name's Jake. I'm 32, and today I finally admitted something to myself that I've been pushing away for years. Ever felt completely invisible to the person who matters most to you? It's like standing behind glass, shouting, waving, but no one notices. Now I'm sitting here, holding an email that could change everything, terrified of pressing send. Because once I do, there's no turning back. And honestly, I'm not even sure if I'm more afraid of leaving or staying exactly where I am right now. Hey, before we dive deeper, why don't you get comfy? Trust me, this story isn't easy for me to share. If you're feeling this like I am, give it a like, subscribe, because honestly, I could use the company. And seriously, drop a comment. I'm curious, what would you do if you were in my shoes? I adjusted the delicate strap of my black cocktail dress, stepping hesitantly into the dazzling chaos of the Hollywood mansion. The party was a glittering mosaic, laughter and murmurs intertwined with the clinking of crystal glasses and the pulse of distant music. Everything here felt amplified, exaggerated, as though life itself was performing for an invisible camera. It was familiar territory for me, a vibrant, intoxicating playground. But beside me, Jake tugged uncomfortably at the sleeve of his dark blazer, eyes darting around like he'd rather vanish into the polished marble floor than face this glossy spectacle. My husband was a screenwriter, one whose brilliance hid beneath quiet evenings hunched over his laptop, lost in stories that no one had yet appreciated fully. He was an observer, not a participant, always lurking on the fringes of the limelight. "Relax," I whispered softly, slipping my arm around his tense elbow. "They're just people. People who don't see me," Jake muttered under his breath, adjusting his glasses anxiously. "They see you." I sighed, gently squeezing his arm. This wasn't new territory for us. I thrived here, within the charm and charisma of the industry elite, securing connections and moving my career forward. Jake, on the other hand, preferred coffee shops and solitude, words flowing into quiet, brilliant scripts nobody in this city had yet recognized. We drifted deeper into the glittering labyrinth. Conversations swirled around us in fragments. "Have you seen her latest project? Phenomenal numbers." "The producer wants something fresher, younger." Jake visibly shrank, shoulders hunched, shadows deepening beneath his eyes. Guilt nudged me softly, but I ignored it. Tonight was important. I needed to mingle, solidify contacts, charm influential directors who could change everything. Soon, a voice broke through the glittering hum. Marcus, a notoriously influential producer, slick-haired and confident, surrounded by eager admirers. He flashed a dazzling smile at me, extending a hand. "Emily, always a pleasure. And who's your friend?" Jake stiffened, his jaw tightening slightly. Before I could speak, Marcus waved dismissively, turning back to me. "Anyway, Em, you simply must come by the studio next week. We're scouting fresh talent, and you know we only want the best." It was casual, yet something flickered in Jake's expression, hurt masked by irritation. "Oh, Marcus," I laughed lightly, aware of the watching crowd. "Careful, or Jake here might think I'm looking for an upgrade." The laughter around us felt sharp, not warm. Jake's eyes flashed briefly with disbelief, then settled into a quiet, chilling hurt that instantly twisted my stomach. "I see," he murmured, pulling away from me gently, eyes distant. "I'm going to get some air." I watched him vanish into the shadows of the garden, my stomach tightening. Had my careless joke stung that deeply? I reassured myself he'd understand it later, that he'd shrug it off as always. But as the party's brilliance danced around me, something felt wrong. Hours later, as our car cut through Los Angeles beneath neon-lit billboards and endless glittering skyscrapers, silence pressed heavily between us. Jake stared blankly out the window, neon colors reflecting against his pale skin, his hand resting limply in his lap. "I'm sorry," I whispered softly, unable to stand the quiet any longer. "It was just a stupid joke, Jake." He didn't look at me, his voice barely audible. "Maybe that's the problem, Emily. Everything is always just a joke to you." I bit my lip, focusing on the bright lights racing past us, feeling the first fragile threads between us fraying quietly into the night. Days slid into one another, carrying the awkward tension of the mansion party, growing thicker between us like slow-forming ice. I threw myself into work, finding refuge in the controlled chaos of film sets, managing schedules, handling demands, always needed, always seen. Jake retreated deeper into himself, locked behind his laptop, existing in a quiet that became increasingly distant. Late one evening, navigating the clutter of our shared office to find paperwork, a glowing laptop screen caught my eye. My gaze lingered on an open email, subject line clear and stark. "Congratulations, Jake. Welcome to our team at Skyline Studios, London." My pulse thundered. My mouth went dry, heart racing as I scrolled further, eyes skimming salary figures, flight arrangements, dates clearly confirming his acceptance. London? My breath grew shallow as disbelief shifted quickly to anger. The front door opened, closed quietly. Jake stood in the entryway, surprise quickly masked by wary resignation. He must have noticed my frozen stance, the blue glow of betrayal lighting my face. "You took a job in London, without even mentioning it?" My voice trembled, frustration dangerously close to fury. Jake hesitated, jaw tightening. "Emily, let's not do this now." "Now is exactly when we're doing this." My voice rose, tight and raw. "You decide our future alone? Are we even partners?" He rubbed his eyes, weariness sinking his shoulders. "Partners? You barely see me, Emily. I'm invisible here. This offer, it's my chance." "So you just leave, without telling me?" My voice cracked, emotions splintering through anger. "I was going to tell you," he sighed, voice heavy, "but I knew you'd never really listen." The accusation hit harder than expected. My throat tightened with hurt. "Don't put this on me, Jake. You're running away, choosing a fantasy over us." "I'm choosing to finally be someone," he exploded suddenly, eyes blazing with frustration. "You think I'm nobody, Emily. Just some shadow beside you at parties, someone to joke about. I'm done being invisible." I stepped back, breath catching painfully. "I never thought of you as nobody." "Didn't you?" His voice softened bitterly. "You never defended me, never believed in me." "I always believed in you," I whispered, but my own words felt hollow, fragile, easily shattered by the painful truth between us. He shook his head, pulling away emotionally even as we stood close physically. "Believing in someone isn't making them feel small every chance you get." Silence settled over us, dense and suffocating. Jake finally broke it, turning away toward our bedroom, voice quiet yet determined. "I'm tired, Emily. I can't keep being second best in my own marriage." The door clicked shut, leaving me alone, my pulse a sharp rhythm of confusion and disbelief. The world I'd carefully built seemed suddenly precarious, shifting dangerously beneath my feet. Was Jake right? Had I unknowingly diminished him, blinded by ambition? The glow of the laptop still illuminated the email, confirmation stark and final. Jake was leaving, moving across an ocean, out of my orbit. I sank heavily onto the cold leather chair, heart hammering painfully, realization crystallizing bitterly in my chest. He hadn't just chosen London. He'd chosen a world without me in it. London was a stark contrast to LA. Gray skies painted with streaks of gentle rain, cobblestone streets reflecting blurred halos of warm, amber streetlights. The city breathed a different rhythm, quiet yet endlessly alive, a perfect canvas for reinvention. My plane landed amidst morning mist, and stepping into Heathrow, my heart quickened not with dread, but possibility. Skyline Studios had arranged an apartment overlooking the Thames, small, modest, yet filled with promise. My first day on set, nerves danced along my spine as I entered the rehearsal room, a converted Victorian theater, all weathered wood and velvet curtains, echoing whispers of 1,000 past stories. Actors milled about, scripts clutched tight, their eyes curious, assessing me. But it was Claire who stood out immediately, effortlessly poised, dark curls framing an inquisitive face. She approached without hesitation, hand outstretched warmly. "You must be Jake. Welcome. We've heard remarkable things." I shook her hand, feeling oddly recognized. Hopefully, not exaggerated. She laughed, a clear, authentic sound that felt genuine, warm. "No, we need fresh voices. Yours could be exactly what we've waited for." Claire moved with natural confidence, quickly bridging my uncertainty with sharp insight. We settled into a booth at a nearby cafe, walls lined with vintage film posters, cups steaming between us. Her questions were intuitive, her feedback precise. "You write as if you're hiding something," she remarked suddenly, gaze penetrating. "Your characters carry secrets, like they're shadows of you." I hesitated, stirring sugar into the dark coffee, feeling exposed yet oddly relieved. Maybe I've always felt like a shadow. "Then it's time to step into the spotlight, Jake. Let your characters speak clearly." Days turned into weeks, my script taking shape, scenes sharpened under Claire's thoughtful guidance. Together, we crafted a narrative rich with raw honesty, vulnerability evident in every line. I found strength in her unwavering belief, something utterly new and empowering. One rainy afternoon, in the dusty quiet of the theater, Claire handed me a printed draft, notes scribbled thoughtfully in margins. "Jake, it's exceptional. You found your voice." Her praise stirred something deeper, a long-neglected self-belief finally surfacing. I stared at the manuscript, fingers brushing over inked pages, feeling for the first time the quiet thrill of genuine pride. "You helped find it," I admitted softly. "You saw something I never could." Claire shook her head gently, eyes serious yet encouraging. "It was always there. Sometimes we just need someone else to reflect our potential back to us." Rehearsals intensified, my script transitioning vividly to life on stage, actors embodying emotions I'd hidden for years. Each rehearsal, each line delivered with earnest intensity, resonated deeply, confirming my choice to risk everything for this new beginning. Yet beneath my growing confidence, a lingering ache remained. Images of Emily's shocked expression, the unresolved pain of our separation. The shadow she'd cast still hovered in quiet moments, a reminder that rebirth didn't erase past wounds. It only reshaped how we carried them forward. But for now, in London's misty embrace, amidst newfound allies and voices echoing proudly in spaces built from dreams, I stood finally visible, fully myself, and undeniably alive. Back in Hollywood, the neon glow of the studio lights blurred into relentless days, each feeling more hollow than the last. The aftermath of Jake's departure lingered everywhere, a shadow cast across the pristine stages in whispered conversations, sideways glances. I pretended not to notice, burying myself in my work, convincing myself that my achievements would dull the sharp ache of loss. But my carefully constructed reality started crumbling around me. It began subtly, with minor setbacks. A canceled meeting here, a missed call there. Soon, whispers drifted through corridors, comments wrapped in soft laughter, deliberately loud enough to reach my ears. "Emily seems distracted lately. Is everything all right?" I ignored the chatter, focusing harder, fighting to maintain control. Until one afternoon, Marcus summoned me into his expansive office, the walls lined with framed photographs of industry giants, each one smiling mockingly. "Emily," he started, leaning casually against his glossy mahogany desk, his eyes coolly appraising, "we've noticed inconsistencies." Inconsistencies? My voice betrayed me slightly, a hint of anxiety slipping through. Missed deadlines, questionable judgment calls. He raised a perfectly manicured hand, cutting off my protest. "We're just concerned. Maybe the pressures of your personal life are—" "My personal life?" Anger flared, sharp and immediate. "This has nothing to do with Jake." Marcus shrugged lightly, a ghost of a smirk tugging at his lips. "Of course not, but we have to consider the bigger picture." Later that evening, rage and humiliation tangled fiercely inside me as I sat alone in my office, screen flickering harshly. Then an anonymous message appeared, stark and unavoidable. On the screen appeared the text, "Did you know Marcus has been actively undermining your projects? Thought you should know." My pulse thundered, disbelief quickly replaced by cold clarity. Marcus, the trusted mentor, the charismatic leader, was he truly my enemy now? I dug through past emails, reviewed meetings, piecing together subtle sabotages I'd missed in my arrogance. Each revelation was a dagger, sharp, painful evidence of betrayal. The next day, I walked onto the set, eyes burning with newfound clarity. Marcus stood laughing with a cluster of junior executives, his eyes flickering briefly towards me, confident, dismissive. I approached, heartbeat steady, voice firm enough to silence the whispers instantly. "I know what you've been doing, Marcus. Undermining me won't erase your own insecurities." A hush settled, thick and charged. Marcus's smile faltered slightly, eyes narrowing. "Careful, Emily. Baseless accusations won't save your reputation." "Baseless?" I echoed calmly, aware of every gaze locked onto us. "I have the proof. Emails, communications you've had behind my back, deliberately harming my reputation." He paled visibly, facade cracking briefly before anger replaced fear. "You're making a mistake." "No," I stated, feeling strangely empowered as the silence intensified. "The mistake was trusting you. The mistake was ever believing I needed your approval." Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it again, aware of the numerous eyes watching, judging. He straightened his jacket stiffly, quickly retreating. Around me, murmurs broke out, this time different, supportive, respectful. Colleagues nodded subtly, offering silent solidarity. But as I walked from the set, relief mixed painfully with emptiness. I had reclaimed control, yes, but standing alone beneath the studio's blinding lights, the realization was stark. Jake wasn't here to witness this victory, and success felt hollow without him to share it. Cannes glittered like a jewel beside the Mediterranean, all luxury yachts and twinkling lights strung across balconies, the city buzzing with anticipation of cinematic greatness. I walked the red carpet, shoulders straight, dressed elegantly in dark silk, projecting confidence despite the tight knot in my stomach. I'd come to reclaim my position, restore my credibility, and perhaps heal some fractured pride. But reality had other plans. As I navigated the dazzling crowd, champagne glasses shimmering under golden lights, a familiar voice cut through the ambient hum, immediately freezing my steps. "So, Jake, your film is receiving outstanding reviews. You must feel incredibly proud." My heart stumbled painfully. Turning, I saw him, standing taller, broader, eyes clear and focused, no longer the hesitant shadow from our past. Jake smiled modestly, his expression vibrant yet humble, drawing admirers effortlessly. Beside him stood Claire, effortlessly graceful, watching him with quiet admiration that sent an uncomfortable pang through my chest. I hesitated, contemplating escape, but it was too late. Our eyes met, and recognition flashed instantly, electric and raw. Jake's expression shifted subtly, warmth replaced by guarded caution. Claire noticed his sudden tension, stepping discreetly aside. "Emily," Jake greeted me softly, carefully neutral. "Jake," I responded, voice smoother than I felt. "Congratulations, you've clearly found your audience." He tilted his head slightly, expression unreadable. "I've found my voice." Silence stretched uncomfortably, thickening with unspoken words. Around us, party chatter became distant static, as though we stood isolated on an emotional island, lights sparkling bitterly above. Finally, I broke the silence. "I saw your acceptance speech online. It was inspiring." He nodded slowly, eyes searching mine, cautious. "Thank you. I meant every word." Another pause, unbearably tense. Claire appeared again, gently placing a hand on Jake's arm, supportive yet tactful. "Jake, they're ready for your interview." He nodded gratefully, turning briefly to me, voice quiet, sincere. "Take care, Emily." Then, just as swiftly as he'd appeared, Jake melted seamlessly into the crowd, Claire guiding him gently. A sense of deep, aching emptiness surged within me, an undeniable truth settling painfully. He had truly moved beyond my world. Later, I watched silently from the edges as Jake spoke passionately to reporters, his voice steady, infused with newfound confidence. Cameras flashed, microphones angled eagerly, absorbing every word. On the screen appeared a reporter's question. "Your script feels deeply personal. Was there real-life inspiration?" Jake paused, thoughtful yet composed, the sea breeze gently ruffling his hair. "It reflects my journey to acceptance of who I am without needing external validation." The words landed heavily, their meaning unmistakably directed towards our shared past. Shame and regret gripped me painfully, flooding through the glittering scenery. I had pushed him away, belittled him, and now his triumph illuminated my failure starkly. The night air felt colder as I wandered towards the sea's edge, waves whispering gently onto moonlit sand, contrasting sharply with the party's distant glamour. Gazing at the endless, darkened sea, I finally allowed myself to confront the truth I'd avoided. Jake wasn't coming back. His success was deserved, genuine, and painfully separate from my existence. Standing alone under the expansive Cannes sky, stars glittering silently above, I understood with bitter clarity. Our paths had irreversibly diverged, leaving me standing in the echoes of what might have been, beneath lights too bright to hide from the truth. Back in Los Angeles, the weight of reality pressed down relentlessly. Bright sunlight streaming through my office window felt harsh, highlighting flaws I'd long ignored. Every surface seemed sterile, emotionless, just polished chrome and lifeless glass, reflecting nothing of who I was or who I'd wanted to be. Each day blurred into monotonous hours, filled with forced smiles and endless tasks that no longer held meaning. Jake's absence now felt tangible, an emptiness haunting every corner of my life. I began noticing things differently, whispered judgments behind closed doors, quick glances averted when I approached. The career I'd painstakingly built now felt precarious, unstable beneath my feet. One morning, my phone buzzed insistently, pulling me from another aimless scroll through work emails. On the screen appeared a curt message from Marcus. "We need to discuss your recent performance issues. Meet me at noon." A wave of dread surged instantly, my stomach knotting painfully. Arriving in his office later felt like stepping onto an execution stage, each footstep heavy, heart pounding unevenly. Marcus stood calmly near the window, his posture deceptively relaxed, watching the bustling streets below. "Emily," he began coolly, without turning, "you've become a distraction." Anger flickered inside me, quickly replaced by helplessness. "Marcus, I'm doing everything asked of me. Your credibility is slipping, he interrupted sharply, finally turning with an indifferent expression. Projects delayed, budgets exceeded, colleagues uncomfortable. You're no longer an asset. That's not fair, I argued, voice strained by rising anxiety. You deliberately set me up to fail. He shook his head dismissively. Victim narratives don't suit you, Emily. Accept accountability. I bit my tongue sharply, tasting blood as humiliation burned my cheeks. Refusing to show vulnerability, I turned swiftly, walking out, aware of watching eyes that felt more hostile each passing day. Unable to breathe, I drove aimlessly through city streets, neon billboards blending into indistinct flashes. Instinctively, I found myself headed towards the quiet coastline, an isolated house perched atop gentle cliffs, a retreat I hadn't visited in years, a place from happier days with Jake. Arriving at sunset, I stepped onto sand cool beneath my feet, ocean waves whispering softly, indifferent to my turmoil. The horizon blazed vibrantly, gold fading gently into deep velvet blues. It felt symbolic, peaceful, yet achingly transient. For days, I drifted in solitude, wandering beaches at dawn, staring into vast empty horizons, desperately seeking clarity. Memories surged, Jake's quiet laughter, scripts he'd read aloud, his patient endurance of my endless ambitions. Regret tightened around my heart, undeniable now. My ambition had turned blind, careless, costing me the one person who'd truly mattered. In my solitude, thoughts turned inwards, confronting difficult truths long avoided. I'd prioritized image over authenticity, professional acclaim over genuine connection. Marcus was merely symptomatic. I'd enabled his manipulations through my blind pursuit of hollow goals. Late one evening, sitting on weathered porch steps, the salty breeze gentle against my skin, I finally acknowledged the stark, humbling reality I'd been avoiding. My pain wasn't about losing my career. It was about losing Jake, and with him, losing the genuine version of myself. Under a canopy of stars scattered brightly across the darkened sky, I knew clearly what had to happen next. I had to rebuild, authentically, honestly, without masks. But this clarity came with its own painful awareness. I'd have to do it utterly alone. London was bustling with life, illuminated by strings of festive lights that brightened the early winter gloom. Each step across the rain-slicked cobblestones reminded me of the journey I'd taken, not merely from Los Angeles, but from invisibility to significance. Yet, despite the praise and success, something deep within still felt incomplete, as though an essential piece remained absent. As the international premiere of my film approached, my anxiety intensified, battling the quiet self-doubt I'd hoped was forever behind me. Each glowing review now felt like pressure, an expectation I wasn't sure I could consistently meet. My fears were quiet shadows, barely noticeable to others, but Claire saw clearly, sensing my unrest. One chilly afternoon, rain pattering gently against the cafe windows, Claire set down her cappuccino and studied me intently. "Jake, you're holding something back again," she said softly, her voice carrying a mix of concern and gentle challenge. "This next script, why are you hesitating?" I sighed, stirring sugar into my coffee, gaze fixed on the swirling patterns. "Maybe I'm afraid lightning won't strike twice. The film was personal. How do I follow something so authentic?" Claire leaned forward, her eyes fierce yet compassionate. "You keep speaking your truth, Jake. Authenticity doesn't vanish after one success. It only deepens." Her words resonated deeply, shaking loose something trapped within. Later that evening, in the solitude of my apartment overlooking the dark, reflective Thames, inspiration quietly reignited. Pages quickly filled with ideas, scenes emerging vividly, dialogues bursting with emotional honesty. This new story wasn't merely another script, It was a candid exploration of all I'd buried, finally confronting my hidden vulnerabilities head-on. Days blurred into nights as I immersed myself, scripting raw dialogues, emotionally charged confrontations, powerful moments of healing. Claire offered insightful feedback, pushing me to dive deeper, fearlessly into emotional truths I'd previously avoided. Soon, rehearsals began anew, my words breathing life on stage. Actors interpreted my lines passionately, giving voice to inner fears, hopes, unresolved pains. I watched silently from shadows in the theater, heart racing at each revelation of character, each admission echoing my own suppressed feelings. One evening, following a powerful rehearsal session, Claire approached, eyes bright with genuine admiration. "Jake, what you're doing is extraordinary. This story, it's profoundly honest." "It's terrifying," I admitted quietly, heart beating unsteadily. She smiled warmly, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. Real courage always is. I returned home later, thoughtful and strangely at peace. Standing on my balcony, overlooking London's sprawling lights reflected softly upon the river, I finally understood. Success hadn't healed my past. It had merely illuminated it, guiding me toward genuine self-acceptance. Yet, as I absorbed the serene, shimmering beauty of the city beneath the velvet night sky, another truth surfaced, softer yet deeply powerful. Emily's absence still felt significant, her shadow quietly lingering. My personal victories felt incomplete without resolution, a quiet ache of unfinished emotional business, unresolved yet undeniable. But now, clarity emerged gently amid uncertainty. I had rediscovered my voice, not only professionally, but personally. My authenticity wasn't a fragile spark, easily extinguished. It was a steady flame, capable of illuminating whatever darkness remained. And for the first time in a very long while, I felt genuinely ready to confront that darkness, and perhaps find healing within it. The studio's sleek boardroom gleamed coldly beneath harsh white lights, glass surfaces reflecting tension that simmered palpably among gathered executives. I entered quietly, pulse racing, my carefully organized evidence clutched tightly, fingers trembling slightly. Marcus sat confidently at the head of the expansive table, casual yet watchful, arrogance radiating from every inch of his poised demeanor. Colleagues glanced curiously, whispers quickly muted by the weighty silence descending. Marcus spoke first, his voice coolly authoritative. "Emily, I assume this relates to your recent concerns." I met his gaze evenly, forcing calm into my voice. "Concerns you helped create, Marcus. Your sabotage has been thorough." A quiet ripple of shock moved through the room, tension snapping taut. Marcus's expression faltered momentarily, annoyance quickly masked behind a practiced veneer. "You're making serious accusations," he warned, eyes narrowing subtly. "Be cautious." My heart pounded louder, determination strengthening my resolve. "I have no reason for caution, Marcus. The truth doesn't frighten me." Carefully, deliberately, I laid documents onto the polished surface. Emails, financial statements, internal memos detailing deliberate mismanagement, strategic neglect, sabotage traced directly to Marcus. Murmurs rose steadily around the table as evidence accumulated, voices whispering disbelief, shock, outrage. Marcus shifted uneasily, his usually confident facade cracking visibly. "Emily, this is ridiculous. You can't seriously—" "Oh, I can," I interrupted firmly, voice rising steadily. "You've used manipulation to undermine me, risking company success just to maintain your power." Around the table, heads turned, gazes sharpening, skepticism replaced by growing realization. I saw faces once indifferent shifting slowly towards respect, acknowledgement, and a shared sense of betrayal. Marcus attempted composure, voice shaking slightly. These documents are out of context. Context? I laughed bitterly, anger flaring openly. Your context is clear. Fear of losing control at any cost. Executives exchanged meaningful glances, expressions hardening against Marcus. The room shifted subtly. He was losing the battle of perception rapidly, visibly unraveling under scrutiny he'd always escaped. Finally, Board Chairman Leonard stood, voice resonating clearly. Marcus, these allegations are deeply troubling. This board cannot overlook deliberate harm to our projects. Marcus paled visibly, eyes darting anxiously around, searching desperately for allies who now turned away, unsupportive. I remained standing tall, strength growing from somewhere deeper, fueled by truth I'd previously buried beneath ambition and pride. My voice rang steady, unshakable. Accountability is overdue. Marcus sank slowly back into his chair, defeated, finally silent. The atmosphere, charged yet resolved, confirmed the shift in power, respect redirected clearly towards me. Yet, as the meeting dispersed slowly, tension dissipating into cautious optimism, a quiet emptiness remained. Victory felt starkly incomplete. Leaving the now silent boardroom, footsteps echoing softly against polished floors, the bitter realization settled deeply within. This win wasn't about career redemption or pride regained. It was about finally acknowledging my own complicity. Marcus had merely exploited weaknesses I'd ignored. Blind ambition, shallow priorities, dismissing genuine relationships for fleeting success. Standing alone beneath fluorescent hallway lights, breathing deeply into quiet stillness, clarity crystallized sharply. My redemption wouldn't truly begin until I faced the one confrontation I'd avoided relentlessly. Reaching out to Jake, confronting unresolved emotional truths long hidden beneath fear. I left the building, resolve strengthening, ready to step forward boldly, finally prepared to face the most challenging truth of all, myself. The theater buzzed with anticipation, the velvet curtains swaying gently as whispers of excitement filled every seat. Bright lights warmed the expansive hall, every row packed with industry luminaries, cameras poised to capture history in the making. Standing backstage, heart pounding, adrenaline surging, I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment pressing against my chest. From the shadows, Claire touched my shoulder softly. "You're ready, Jake. Speak your truth." I nodded gratefully, absorbing her quiet confidence, stepping out as applause erupted warmly, welcoming me onto the gleaming stage. Lights illuminated every detail vividly, faces eager, attentive. My gaze scanned the audience instinctively, heart skipping unexpectedly. Emily sat quietly in a distant row, eyes fixed intently on mine, a complex blend of pride and regret, unmistakable even from afar. Focusing, I approached the podium, gripping its edges to steady my nerves. "This film," I began clearly, voice strong yet vulnerable, "is about journeys toward acceptance, forgiveness, and self-discovery. It's intensely personal because I lived it." Silence settled reverently, every breath in the hall seemingly suspended, waiting. For too long, I believed I needed validation to matter, to be visible. But true visibility only comes from acknowledging your own worth, without relying on anyone else's reflection. I paused briefly, absorbing the heavy silence, hundreds of eyes intent, reflective, supportive. I once felt invisible in my own marriage, in my career, in myself. That invisibility wasn't forced. It was accepted because I allowed others' perceptions to define me. No longer. This film, these words, they're proof of reclaiming my voice. Emotion tightened my throat slightly, raw yet powerful. I've learned genuine success isn't recognition from others. It's recognizing yourself, authentically, wholly, and unapologetically. My gaze drifted briefly back toward Emily, her eyes shining, tears silently slipping down her cheeks, vulnerability stark beneath glittering lights. Something deep within softened immediately, anger replaced by quiet empathy, understanding. In that instant, bitterness evaporated, replaced by a gentle, compassionate acceptance of shared history, flawed yet beautiful in its complexity. Applause surged suddenly, breaking the fragile intimacy. The theater rose simultaneously. Thunderous ovation, faces glowing with emotion, genuine support resonating profoundly. Yet, amid accolades, my heart remained quietly focused elsewhere, on healing, forgiveness, and release. Backstage afterward, as celebrations swirled around me, Claire approached softly, perceptively aware of my introspection. "You did it, Jake," she whispered, pride evident. "You spoke the truth." I smiled gratefully, yet pensively. It felt more important than I imagined. Gently, Claire squeezed my hand reassuringly. "It always is." Outside later, beneath a velvety midnight sky punctuated by glittering stars, I stood alone, breathing deeply into the tranquility. Footsteps approached softly, hesitant yet familiar. "Jake?" I turned slowly. Emily stood silhouetted gently by soft streetlights, expression vulnerable yet sincere. "Your speech," she began softly, voice trembling. "It was everything I needed to hear. I'm so sorry, Jake." Quiet lingered gently between us, filled not with pain, but cautious hopefulness. "Thank you," I finally whispered gently. "That means more than you realize." She nodded slowly, tears shimmering again, a silent acknowledgement of healing begun. In that quiet moment beneath expansive skies, illuminated gently by distant stars, a fragile yet profound truth crystallized clearly. Genuine triumph wasn't applause or acclaim. It was authentic reconciliation, acceptance, and the courage to forgive fully, without reservation. Dawn broke softly, painting Los Angeles in tender hues of rose and gold, the city slowly awakening beneath a clear, endless sky. I'd climbed the familiar hills overlooking the sprawling cityscape, drawn instinctively to this vantage, one that had once felt isolating, but now offered peaceful clarity. The cool morning breeze whispered gently, carrying faint echoes of traffic from the awakening streets below. Footsteps crunched quietly against gravel, measured and familiar. I didn't turn immediately, allowing the moment to linger, anticipation blending softly with gentle apprehension. "Jake," Emily's voice came gently, tentative yet sincere. "Can we talk?" I turned slowly, heart steady, surprisingly calm. She stood illuminated softly by early sunlight, eyes cautious yet hopeful, sincerity shining unmistakably through uncertainty. "Of course," I replied quietly, voice welcoming yet neutral, giving space without expectation. She stepped closer, breathing deeply. "I spent months trying to understand what went wrong, why I couldn't see what mattered. I hurt you deeply, Jake, and I'm genuinely sorry." I nodded slowly, acknowledging her sincerity, the weight of past pain momentarily suspended between us. "Emily, our problems weren't solely yours. I allowed myself to disappear. Both of us played roles." Her gaze held mine steadily, vulnerability evident yet unwavering. "You found something incredible within yourself. Watching you speak yesterday, I realized how deeply I'd underestimated you and us." I exhaled softly, relief mixing subtly with nostalgia. We both underestimated each other, maybe ourselves too. She nodded quietly, eyes glistening gently. "So, what now?" Quiet lingered again, expansive yet comfortable, a silence no longer filled with pain or resentment, merely thoughtful reflection. "Now," I said softly, clearly, "we move forward honestly, separately, but stronger because of everything we've faced." Her expression softened, understanding and acceptance shining through. I suppose love isn't always enough to keep people together. No, I acknowledged gently. But it's enough to help us heal and grow. She smiled faintly, a genuine warmth appearing through her sadness. I'm proud of you, Jake, truly. I felt quiet gratitude swelling inside. And I believe you'll find something equally meaningful, Emily, something authentic. We stood silently, shoulder to shoulder, gazing over the city below, bathed warmly in rising sunlight. The skyline gleamed gently, buildings becoming silhouettes in the golden dawn, symbolizing renewal, hope, and possibility. Do you regret any of it? Emily asked softly, breaking the tranquil silence. I considered carefully, shaking my head slowly. Regret implies wishing to erase experience. But everything that happened, the pain, growth, separation, brought clarity. We both needed that. She breathed deeply, calmness settling visibly within her posture. I want you to know, Jake, that despite everything, I genuinely wish you happiness. Turning fully toward her, my expression softened openly. I wish you the same, Emily. Always. She smiled warmly, nodding in quiet gratitude, and then gently stepped away, walking calmly down the hill, peace evident in every measured step, shadow elongating softly behind her in morning's gentle glow. Alone again, I watched the city awaken fully, sunlight spreading expansively, warm, clear, hopeful. The past felt resolved, the future wide open, illuminated by genuine authenticity and self-awareness. And beneath this new dawn, standing quietly above the city that had witnessed my struggles and triumphs, I finally felt complete, free from shadows, ready to embrace whatever awaited ahead.